Welcome, everyone. We are so glad you're here for New Year, New You, reframing your personal style for a virtual world. We're really glad that you joined us today. It is, we are in such trying times today, and we're glad that you took some personal time to make it, to do something for yourself. It's just so important. And just to that point, we actually have 240 people that are registered for today's event. So that says that this is a topic that people really need. And I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Shira Lotzar. I'm joined by my colleagues, Allison Hamilton-Rohe and Kiki L'Italien, and we are excited to share our best tips for redesigning your image and leveraging your virtual technology to build deeper connections with people on the other side of the screen. So I'm sure we can all agree that 2020 was a year of reinvention, both personally and professionally. Some of us learned how to transform our kitchen table into an office. Some of us got a pet, if we could find one. And we all got Zoom fatigue, right? One of the biggest pivots really was shrinking down our world to the size of a video screen, possibly with a four-legged Fred walking in front of it. So, here we are in 2020. It's a new normal. Things are just so different, than they were pre-COVID. And, we are dealing with this small screen, right? How do we look our best, act our best, be our best, and engage with people? So from our side of the screen, we know what things look like, right? We now know what our workspace is, or we've transmogrified it somehow. The kids are being homeschooled if we have kids, and we know when we're going for our daily walk, right? So all these things have sort of changed. But what we may not have figured out is how others are engaging with us from their side of the screen. That small digital rectangle that you're sitting in front of right now opens up a really big window into what's going on into your world, whether you know it or not. So with a little intention, you can transform your attire, your background, even your body language to build more authentic relationships with your clients, with your colleagues, and even potentially future employers if you're in an interview. So before we get started, here's the flow for our discussion. Allison, Kiki, and I are going to share our tips for about 15 minutes each. And then we're going to have about 15 minutes of Q&A. So in the meanwhile, as you're hearing us chat, please put your questions in the chat box on YouTube. And then we're going to try to answer them during the session or at the end, time permitting. We'll kind of see how the flow goes. And that's it. So that's kind of how we're going to work this. And so I'm going to start with Allison. That's how we're going to kick things off. So Allison, how can we reinvent our personal style in 2021 to showcase our most authentic selves in a virtual world?
Thanks, Shira. That's a great question, and I'm excited to be here. I think what I really want to focus on for 2021 is this idea of the opportunity that this has presented us with. Some of you may be spending your entire day on phone calls. You may or may not be on video all day long. You may have days where you're not on video at all. And obviously, the situation is extremely different from getting up, getting dressed, and going into the office or traveling, where you're constantly in front of people and you sort of make your choices or you pack your bag and that's it. You have to deal with it. What we have now in this work from home situation is an opportunity to really kind of experiment and see how you feel in your body and sort of think about what it is that helps you look and feel your best. And as Shira said, these are such challenging times. There are days when it's just hard to get out of bed. There's so much going on. It can be so overwhelming. I know for a lot of people, initially, they just went straight to sweats, or there was this sort of idea of business on top and party on the bottom, right? And you may have figured your way into some accommodation thereof. But what I want to invite you to think about is the opportunity that this presents for you to really figure out how you want to show up on a daily basis for others, but mostly for yourself. So how do you look good and how do you feel good? Because I don't think that work is going to return to the way it was. There is going to be some sort of hybrid, I think, going forward. So you're going to have some days at home, have some days in the office, and I think things will probably be a little bit more casual than they were. So starting with the opportunity and thinking about, as Shira said, this small screen. The first thing you need to think about when you are getting ready for your day, if you're going to be on screen, is your grooming. So where you might not have cared so much about your hair, or you might not have been someone who wears makeup, on the smaller screen, it really does make a difference. So, I know initially during COVID, there were a lot of people who weren't going to get their hair cut because it wasn't safe. And I fully understand and support that. But hopefully now you've figured out a way to, or you and your hairstylist have figured out a way to mask up and be socially distant, or go with your hair wet to your haircut, or whatever it is. The grooming piece is really important because people are seeing you more up close. So for example, when I present, I always curl my hair. I wear a little bit more makeup than I would normally. If you don't like the idea of makeup, the best way to sort of sharpen things up is to make sure your eyebrows are groomed, and pay attention to your lips, whether it's chapstick or lip gloss or lipstick, whatever it is that you like, depending on how you like to show up and what makes you feel best. Because it's from here on up, right? So you want something on your face that's groomed, you want your hair brushed, and something to surround your face. Okay, so that's grooming. Now we want to talk about color and how you feel your best. So color has meaning, and each one of the colors that you choose, the light reflects on your garment, and then it reflects on your face. So that's, I don't know if you remember, or maybe I'm dating myself, the whole color me beautiful craze in the 80s. Every person has a different palette that they look best in. And you can get really complicated and specific with this, but the basic bottom line is, if you put something on and it makes you look tired, it's not your color. If you put something on and it makes you look vibrant, it is, because the light is reflecting on the color and back onto your skin. So think about wearing color on screen, colors that make you look good and make you feel good. But also think about this idea of priming. So if, for example, you want to amplify the fact that it's a fresh start to the week, you might want to think about wearing white. Or you want to be more compassionate today, you might think about wearing pink. Or you want to show your subtlety, you might want to think about wearing gray. So each color has a meaning, and that meaning is easily found on Pinterest or Google. And it's also, you have to remember, culturally specific. So here in the Western world, colors have certain meanings. In different cultures, they have different meanings. So you want to be sensitive to whomever you're speaking with. Now, the last piece is, of course, how you feel. You get to be comfortable. You get to feel good in your clothes. And this may be something that is brand new to you. If, for example, you've been wearing a suit and tie every day and you're not used to being able to be comfortable. So you can have jeans that have stretch. You can even wear leggings because nothing can be seen, right? And then you can go with something like a jacket or a blouse or a shirt or a sweater that is comfortable, but at the same time has some color and looks good. Now, finally, the last thing I would just want to point out to you is to think about some sort of structure, especially if you're going for an interview or you're presenting. So notice how my chair is black and I've got a color on so you can specifically see my shoulders. This delineates my space and my body, and it makes it very clean and pleasing in terms of the setup of this shot. So Kiki's going to talk more about this, but I've got a little bit like a half a head above me, my head, and then I've got this structured jacket on, something to call attention to my face with this lace. You could also wear a necklace or a scarf or a tie. Probably no one's wearing a tie. Pointed collared shirt is good. If you're going to wear a sweater, maybe try for a half zip rather than a crew neck, or a turtleneck, or a cardigan. So something that's going to create some structure and depth of field so that the shot is interesting and has some layers to it. All right, so those are basically my 3 tips I'm looking at the clock and seeing I went a little faster than that I needed to, but that's the New Yorker in me. I
There
tend to
you
talk a
go.
little fast.
Thanks, Allison. I'm sure we'll have lots of comments for you afterwards. Lots of questions.
Yeah, so if there are any questions now, I can take them. Has anything come across or anyone have any comments for now?
No, not yet. I think people are still sort of taking it all in. So thank you, Allison. Those are great, great tips. So let's turn to Kiki. Kiki, can you share your insights on how to fashion an authentic look and more specifically a video frame to transform our virtual world into valuable relationships?
Absolutely. I'm so happy to do this. Okay. So, first of all, let me just call attention to the fact that while we're giving tips and advice for all of you to follow, and we try to follow these things ourselves, look, no one's 100% perfect, right? So, the dog may bark, you can't control all of your environment. And look, I'm wearing black. Here's the black chair. There's no clear line of delineation, and I even know better. So, you can't get it perfect all of the time. We have to exercise grace and just accept that. That said, you do have some control, right? And so, one of the most important things you can do, and we were talking about a little bit before, was you can actually take a moment in the beginning to be thinking about, okay, I'm going to have this important meeting today. How can I best prepare? What do I need to be prepared for? And it's probably a good thing for you to think about it just as if you were going to have to plan your commute and to go meet someone, except it's let's do the on ramp into getting ready for this important meeting. Now, I see that there is a question over here. What should we wear to online interviews? Thank you. And I do want to make sure. Ooh, and here's another one. Also, is there a choice of color for the interview for tech firm? All right, you keep those questions coming in because we're going to address all of those with all of the panelists at the end. But I will say this, as for color, because I have to talk about this anyway. When you're looking at the frame, when you're figuring out how are you filling this frame that you have to work with, you need to be thinking about color, not just about the color that you're wearing, but the color that's around you. What is the color that's best going to suit you? I have a great story to give you as an example because I just went through a move. And right now, and maybe you'll hear somebody talking through the walls here pretty soon because right now I am staying at my in-laws, okay? I'm in between the house we're selling, the house we're buying, and I am occupying this space that I have available to me. Who can identify with this? All right. So first, I got permission to see if I could wallpaper the wall that was going to be behind me for my desk for the office that I'm occupying. This used to be a bedroom, believe it or not. They gave me permission, but you don't have to necessarily re-wallpaper an entire wall. You can figure out what's going to work for your background so that it best complements your skin tone, it best complements the space that you're in, and it gives the impression or the perception that you want to give to other people. Now, for me, I know that this tone, this looks sort of brownish, right? Kind of tan, depending on the resolution on your screen. I know that the colors that are mixed in this, there's a little bit of blue in here too. I know that the colors that are mixed into this actually suit my skin tone pretty well. And so the reason that I chose this wallpaper was because I knew I was going to be on camera. I'm on camera almost for some kind of meeting, and I have an interview series where I have to be on camera every week. So I need to be thinking about this all the time. You may not have to be on camera for important meetings every single day, but the fact is that even if tomorrow we all started meeting in person, just like we did before, you still are going to have more meetings that are going to happen online. You wouldn't be here if you didn't think it was important to show up and as your best on video. So be thinking about what fills the frame. And as our question asker over here, and thank you for being brave and asking the questions right away, asked about colors, think about the colors that you wear, but also think about the colors that are going to be in the frame. One thing that you want to be wary of is the hostage video. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you have a perfectly clean white wall and nothing else that's in it, we call that the hostage video, because there's nothing that has any kind of personality. You can't tell where it's being filmed. You can't tell the location, the style, the decor. There's just nothing to go off of. And when you're communicating with people, it does help to give a few visual cues about who you are. That doesn't mean to say that you want to, have your guitar collection behind you necessarily, or anything to show that you have a bottle cap collection that you've been keeping for years. It's just to say to be very aware of what your surroundings are. I love books. What do they tell you about a person? They say that maybe that person reads. Maybe that person occasionally opens a book. That's not a bad thing. And so it's okay for them to be in the shot. But some people have messier bookshelves than others, right? And do we want to show disorganization? Even if we are extremely, we read a lot and we're very intellectual, and we keep a disorganized bookshelf in general, that is not what we want in the shot. If you think about how you watch a movie, or if you watch a TV show, and you're introduced to a character in the frame, and you're trying to evaluate, who is this character? What are they all about? On purpose, they give you visual cues in the shot. So if somebody sees that the bookcase is meticulously organized, and the person in front of you, they seem well groomed, and there are all these different clues that are within that frame, you're making your decision up about who that character is, and little tiny bits of personality that might be leaking through or hinted at in the picture the whole time that that person is in the shot. You're evaluating everything from the microphone that's over here on the edge to the background, to what's on the side. So when you see that someone has put a little extra energy and effort into what their surroundings are, try to think about what it is that they're trying to convey, but also learn and take that on and say, is that something that I want to have somebody else perceive about me? If you see someone that you greatly admire, and they have a setup behind them that makes you think positive things, positive attributes about them that you wish to have for yourself, these are clues. You can use that as an example, so that you can say, okay, I don't play guitar all the time, so I don't have that in the shot. But what is something that I admire and that I also want people to know about me that I might include in a simple, nuanced way in the shot? And you can include these things, and they can actually serve you, but be very aware. Now, I see there are some great questions coming in. Why not use a color background that suits you and upload it to Zoom? You can. Here's what you need to be aware of when you're thinking about the color background and uploading it to Zoom. This is a great idea. There are two things you need to know for sure if you're going to do that. One is that you need to make sure that you have great resolution on both your camera and the way that it's being picked up, but also you need to be aware that the automatic background feature for that uses the Zoom background that you just put in the background for yourself. It does a fuzzy version as an outline, right? And the best way you can clean up that sort of fuzziness around you is by using the green screen or the blue screen, and it will be able to match and create cleaner lines. Now, the danger around that is that even with the blue screen or the green screen that you're using, what happens is that sometimes it's very difficult for the computer to sort of read and define, and it will pull bandwidth from your connection. So if you're worried about the connection, and you're worried about making sure that doesn't break up, say you're in the middle of a very important business call, then you're either going to have to be okay with it being sort of fuzzy and out of focus and the bandwidth being pulled, or you're going to have to choose not to use that virtual background. And I don't think a lot of people understand that does actually, that can make your connection less stable. So if you ever do find that you're having some audio issues and you're struggling with your connection, that's one way that you can improve it. But that's one thing I would say. It's a great feature to have, but especially if you have a lot of people using your internet or something like that, you need to be aware that that's something that can pull a lot of bandwidth from what you're doing. All right. And then the other question has to do with what kind of lighting do you recommend? Okay, so 3-point lighting is your key here. Does that mean you have to go buy a ring light? Well, if you haven't bought a ring light sometime during the duration of 2020 or the beginning of 2021, then you're probably in the minority. I'm not sure. You don't have to buy a ring light, though. If you have, congratulations. Are you enjoying it? Let me know. If you haven't, it doesn't mean that you're supposed to do without good lighting. What you can do is you can take lamps that are around your room and you can play with them. But the key is 3-point lighting. What does 3-point lighting mean? That means that you basically have a surround of lighting that is facing you. One on this side, one on that side, and one behind the camera so that it's shining a light on your face. The key light that you need to be aware of is the light that's coming towards you from behind the camera. And the reason why you need to be aware of that is because that's what's lighting up this. This is how we communicate. This is what people are looking at. They're reading your features. They're reading your eyes. They're reading your well-defined eyebrows that Allison was telling you about before. The eyebrows frame the face, by the way. This is very important stuff. And you need to have this part lit up so that people can read those expressions, especially when we can't be in the same room and you can't read all of these other visual cues that you would normally have, right? So yes, it is very important to be aware of your lighting, the most important light being behind the camera. And by the way, let me tell you that I have professional lights in here, but on my desk, I have this really lovely desk lamp that I love. It makes me feel good while I'm working during the day. It makes me more productive because I feel good that I'm sitting at my desk during the day. But when I have to go on camera, it's a little bit bright. It can kind of make me overexposed if I'm not correcting for it. So what do? Real super technical. I have a sort of a diaphanous scarf that has butterflies on it. And I throw it over. It's kind of like the way we decorated in college, right? I throw it over the lamp so it provides a filter. And it allows me to be able to have a more filtered light over here. And it doesn't make me overexposed on as the way that the camera is receiving the image, right? So that's one way that you can kind of create your own filters and mess around with your lighting a little bit. The other thing that you need to know is that this takes a little tweaking. It takes a little bit of maneuvering. So, one thing that you might notice is that different cameras at different times will render lighting differently. And there's just no way around it. I have 2 cameras. They're exactly the same. They're the exact same brand. I mean, they are the exact same brand, exact same model, all of it. But when I plug them into the computer, they render light differently. One will receive this like it's super, super bright, and the other one will be fine. And so what I need to know is that if I'm traveling with one, or if I'm in a different part of the house with one, I'm going to have to change my settings for the way and mess around with my lighting a little bit. So when you have to do that, just understand that you need to build in a little bit of time to move things around a little bit and make adjustments, because even if you've gone through it before and set it up perfectly, any minor change, even if it's the same model of camera, will shift things. So just allow for that a little bit. All right, good question about lighting. Let's see here. We also have the patterned, I have a folding screen. Oh, yeah. So I'm seeing the folding screen up. You guys are sharing tips with each other. You're amazing. Look what a great group of people we have. That's fantastic. I'm going to pull one more because I don't want to go over my time. I'm not sure how I'm doing, but pattern backgrounds. This is really important to talk about because you notice I have a pattern behind me. I thought that was a no-no, Kiki. I thought that we shouldn't have any patterns on camera. All right, so here's the deal. Some patterns are fine. Some patterns are not fine. So could that be any more clear? Look, if you have a large repeating pattern, there are some good things that can do. Now, subconsciously, as you're taking in the pattern behind, you might notice a few things. What are you noticing? You're noticing some color coordination happening with my books, right? You're noticing that there's a little bit of a pattern behind me on the wallpaper. Patterns by themselves are not bad, right? Because the eye will perceive a pattern and it will say, I know what happens next. Now, in a time of uncertainty, isn't it psychologically nice to feel like you know what happens next? Do you have an idea that the rest of this bookshelf probably looks somewhat similar to this, and that's probably organized according to color? Do you have a feeling that at least you know I'm not completely crazy because I organize my books, you know? And this background is, because it's muted, it's not capturing most of the attention. I will say I get a lot of compliments on my wallpaper, but it's not actually capturing all of the attention visually. And so that's fine. You know, if you have a pattern in the background, it can actually be a good thing. It can be something that helps to make people feel safer and helps you to establish trust faster when you're building relationships on camera and when you have to be apart and not in the same room, right? However, as you can probably imagine, if I had the referee stripes on or something like that, super high contrast, black and white. Now, these are things that Allison and Shira and I would probably go out sometime when we're able to get together and have fun. We would have fun and we would go out and we would go shopping and explore. And maybe it's black and white and it's high contrast and it's all sorts of exciting. However, on camera, the black and white high contrast stripe would be something that the camera itself would have a hard time with. And actually you would too. Your eyes would get tired. And it's not a good thing for it's not conducive to building trusting relationships over by webcam. Go figure. So you need to be wary of the types of patterns that you're using because they can cause something that will also look like movement across the screen. And that's very disconcerting because nothing should be moving except for like our hands and our features. If the shirt is moving by itself, that could be problematic. You also have to be aware that if you wear green and you have a green screen, and I'm just going to say it, you probably already know it, that part of you will disappear. It's going to happen. And unless that's something you're going for, it's not a great thing. You know what? I've given a lot of tips. I'm going to give you one more, and then I'm going to pull all of us back up. And the last tip I'm going to say is this. If you think like a journalist and think about what's in the shot, you're thinking about the story. If you think like an artist, then you're thinking about the colors. You're thinking about the personality, right? If you think like a criminal, you want to think about anything that happens to be giving too much information in your shot. So what happens when someone goes in to record somebody, if you're doing like any kind of media tour, is people will go through and make sure that anything with writing, any notebooks, anything, pictures, things in the background, to make sure that there's a sweep that's done. It's a security sweep to make sure that you're not releasing information because even if it's tiny, even if it's a handwritten note that's on a Post-it note in the background, that can be blown up and people can get information from it. So with that, I'm going to bring up my colleagues. Yes, the other panelists.
Thanks, Kiki. Those are amazing tips. And I know there are so many other questions that have come up, during our time. We're going to do our very, very best to answer them at the end. So thanks, ladies, so far for your great tips. And I'll keep it going. So I'm going to pivot here and I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can go from looking your best to acting your best, whether you're in a team meeting, a client meeting, or an interview. Some of you may know I'm a career coach, I'm a recruiter, so I've got a lot of experience dealing with people in a lot of those settings. And so here are my 3 tips. My first one is to remember that first impressions are lasting impressions, and especially when you are dealing with virtual technology, right? So in a regular traditional setting, when you're meeting with somebody in person, you've got the whole commute, and you might be running late for traffic, and of course you let the person know, hey, I'm going to be 5 minutes late. All of those niceties that we've been used to for years kind of go out the window with Zoom, right? And with virtual technology. So I'm going to share with you, first of all, a few tips around this kind of first impression thing that will help, kind of make your engagement with that person a little bit more refined, right? So the first thing is, when you're scheduling your meeting, right, ask your contact for their phone number, cell phone in particular, in case you have internet issues, because you know how it is, right? We have all good intention, we get online, internet's not working, my computer's restarting, whatever it is, and suddenly you find yourself, you're going to be late. So having that person's phone number to call them is great, because they may not be checking your email at the moment that you write them. Also, if your video call, like your Zoom call, freezes or it drops off, you can seamlessly switch to phone. I do that all the time. Somebody's having internet issues, and I'll say, hey, let's go ahead and switch to phone. Let's keep the Zoom on. We mute the computer, mute the Zoom, everything's muted. We can still see each other, but then we're talking by phone so we can hear each other, and so nobody gets dropped off. So that's a point. Also, and this might go without saying, but we really need to do this periodically, check your Wi-Fi strength. Ensure that you have a solid connection for the call. Of course, you can't control what's going on in the other person's side of the world, but at least on your side, you can really try to make sure that your connection is strong. And I realize when you have other people in the home and everybody's using bandwidth, it can get a little bit challenging, but do your best to have strong Wi-Fi strength, especially for those really important meetings like an interview. Another thing is eliminate personal distractions. Kiki talked a little bit about lighting and so forth. Well, look for light. Listen for noise, right? You might have other people in your home. You might have might be the time of your meeting that the garbage collector is coming or whatever. There's construction. Try to figure out ways to eliminate light and eliminate noise. Monitor family members. Monitor. This morning, actually, I was on a Zoom call with a client, and right behind her, the door creaks open, and in walks the dog, and then in walks the cat. And that was cute because we had a good relationship. But if it was an interview, it might have been a little bit distracting, right? So watch for those kinds of things. Another sort of courteous tip is, be sure to sign on to your video call only 1 minute before the start time. You may not have heard anybody give you this tip, but it's important, because what happens is, if you sign on any earlier, it could actually make your host feel pressured. Why? For 2 reasons. Number one, what happens, especially with Zoom, is that the host will receive a note in their email that you've logged on. So if you've logged on 5 minutes before, they're going to see that. They're going to feel a little bit pressured. I've got to get on. And number 2, even worse, if they're already on a Zoom call, what'll happen is, when you log on, you're going to come up in the waiting room, and you're going to be sitting there for 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. Now you might think, hey, I'm on early. That's great. I'm looking professional. And sure, if you were live and then sitting in someone's office, absolutely show up 5 or 10 minutes early and sit in the reception area. But on Zoom, 1 minute early, so that they're not feeling too pressured. And of course, you don't want to be late, right? So 1, 2, 3 minutes late on Zoom actually seems like a lifetime, right? Where it didn't seem that way, in person. And then finally, in this tip, another way to be courteous is to confirm how much time your host has allotted for the meeting. When you come on the call, hey, how much time do you have? I want to be respectful. And the main reason for that is because these days, so many people book their Zoom calls back to back. So the other thing you can do is, when you're nearing the end of your allotted time, ask your host if they need to wrap up, right? So this is just really being courteous all the way around, from your lighting, your noise, your technology. When you sign on, all of that, that's my first tip. My second tip is, let your personality shine. We don't have the benefit in Zoom world of full body communication, full body language. 80% of all communication is nonverbal. It's true. Which is, of course, why we have so many challenges with email, right? Because we can't express our personality that well in written form. But we think in Zoom, we're seeing each other in person. Not really. We don't have the benefit of that full body language. So you need to maximize your body language. to make your best personal connection through that very small screen. So a few little tips. Number one, show your full head and shoulder shot so that people focus on you rather than your background. I mean, it's great, all the tips that Kiki gave about, what you should have in your background and so forth. But some people are positioned so far away from their screen that you show up as this tiny little figure, and the rest of the room is really what takes up the screen. And then people end up focusing on your background rather than focusing on what you're saying. Another thing is flash those pearly whites, right? It's always a great thing to smile, but especially when you're on a Zoom call, it really heightens your approachability. And likewise, lean forward sometimes, right? To emphasize points, demonstrate your energy level. A little bit of animation can really help to build that rapport with somebody. Use hand gestures. Now you can, I use them a lot. I just like to talk with my hands, but don't overuse them, right? Because they can be distracting. If you're trying to make a point, it's okay, but not all the time. And then really for the most confident body language, consider purchasing a standing desk. Now, me, Kiki, and Allison, we're not doing that at the moment, but if we were, in fact, you can see that often when you're watching a newscast, how the confidence that somebody shows because they're standing up straight, their diaphragm is open. It's actually a sales technique to stand up when you're talking, but having that standing desk can really be helpful to express your confidence. By the way, it's also good for, just physicality, right? Gives a little more blood flow. Some people are doing it for exercise as well. And then my third tip is to leverage technology to establish your personal connection. So, technology has not only changed the way we're perceived, it really does affect our ability to make a personal connection and also share information. So one of the things you can do is make it appear that you're looking directly into someone's eyes by repositioning your webcam. This is one of the most important tips you could take away here. And I know we've all experienced this because you know what it's like, right? You're looking at somebody, right? You're looking at their picture. Where's their picture? On the monitor. Well, you're looking down at them, which means when they're looking at you, it looks like you're looking down, not at them. So one of the things you can do, and this is particularly a Zoom feature, although some other platforms have it as well, but you can do this really with anything, but especially with Zoom, is minimize your video screen. So let's say you're on Zoom right now, which I know we're not on that platform. Hit the minimize button on Zoom. What that will do is it'll take the picture of that person and it'll turn it into a little box. I mean, a tiny little box. You reposition that box right underneath your webcam. So that makes it look like you're looking directly into their eyes. And if you're using a couple of screens, and I saw a comment in the chat about this, make sure to have your webcam, have an external webcam so that wherever you want to position it, that's where you're looking, right? So just if you have multiple screens, take your webcam, put it in, for example, your middle one, it doesn't really matter, but wherever you want to be looking, that's where you want to move that little box. Now, here's the second really cool benefit of doing it this way. Not only are you looking in their eyes, but now you have access to all of the documents on your computer. So you can take notes, you can read notes, you can do all of this with hardly breaking any eye contact. So you can be typing, you can be talking, and it really looks like you're looking directly at them. And speaking of accessing documents, if you are discussing documents from your computer, offer to share your screen for clarity. Now, I'm not suggesting anything that people don't do. Of course, we all use screen share these days. And yet sometimes when you're in a meeting, for example, an interview, where you feel like you have to sort of take a little bit of a back seat in the relationship and let the other person drive, it's okay to say, hey, may I share my screen? I'd like to share a sample. I'd like to share my notes. I'd like to share something that will be helpful to add to the conversation. Now, yes, the person's going to have to, give you access. They might take a second to change the security on their settings, but really proffering that, take advantage of the fact that you're actually in front of a computer. Because normally, when we were used to be face to face, we couldn't do that. We had to physically bring hard copies, or we had to turn our computer around. This way, you can actually enhance the conversation by offering to share documents. And then finally, if you have any follow-on action items, it's always a good idea to email your person rather than putting the information in the chat box. Why? Well, either they can't grab it quickly enough, they forget to grab it, or they grab it and then it's just sort of lost on their computer. Whereas if you send an email with all the documentation, the links, the attachments, what have you, it's easily fileable. They can take action on it. You're basically making life easy for them to engage better with you. All right. So those are my few tips there. And what I wanted to do is make sure that we're tackling some of the questions that are in in the chat box here. So what I wanted to do is actually go back, right? Because I know we've had a whole bunch of questions, and I know that Kiki, there were a bunch that were coming up for you that you weren't able to handle. So let's just use the remainder of this time, see if we can go through one by one and just tackle everybody's questions right up front. So Kiki, I know when you were talking, one of the questions that came up was, can you speak to having a window behind you? Window blinds open or closed? I know that you have a lot to say about that one.
I do. I have a ton to say because you know what? If you, and that we call that witness protection program, right? Because if you have a ton of light coming from the back and you don't have as much counteracting it coming from the front, then you know, it's hard to see someone's expression on their face. So you have to be very, very careful about this. Window blinds open or closed? Closed, closed, closed. And yes, maybe even move. Now, that said, while I've been moving from house to house, you know, of course, there was the house hunting that was a, you know, part of this job. And there are some amazing offices out there. You may be sitting, you may be watching this. Actually, Kimberly B, you may be watching this right now, sitting in front of the most gorgeous office window and thinking, oh, but look at this gorgeous window. And this is where my desk is. And this is where my computer is. How do I make this work? Look, you know, there are some gorgeous spaces, and it may be something where you use blinds or curtains or something just for the time that you need to be online. If you're able to use blinds and you're able to counteract that by having a good light source from behind your camera that's facing you and lighting you up more than the light that's coming from behind you, then you might be fine. And you can totally have a gorgeous window from behind you. Good example is our friend Allison here has the screen behind her, and you can see a little bit of light coming through.
I can show you. This is a window, and see how totally blinded you are by that light. And with the screen, I mean, it cuts it down a little bit, not enough, honestly. Like I should have a blind there, but you know, that's there. I mean, it's just a whole room of windows. So
Right.
there's not a whole lot I can do about that, but the screen does cut down on the light.
Yeah. So if you can, you know, use blinds, use drapes, use a screen, use something. But the important thing is to make sure that as long as this part is seen the most, right? And it's not fighting with what's happening behind you, then you win.
Great. So thanks for that, Kiki. So Carol said that she has to be quite close to the camera for whatever reason. She said, this means I'm all face and I'm too close. What can I do?
Okay. Okay. So
yeah.
Oh,
Carolyn. Yeah, I actually just pulled out part of her question.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so has to be quite close. And I think I see the comment over here. Okay. All right, you have to be quite close to the camera. This means you're all facing too close to the camera. What can you do? Okay, well, I mean, I'm assuming that the choice isn't that you have another monitor or something like that that you can move closer to you so that you can observe that. One thing that you might want to do is you might want to expand the window, zoom in so that you have it so that it's bigger on the screen and it allows you to move back. Now, the reason why you want to do that and you want to have that space is obvious because you don't want to look like you're right in everyone's faces. We do want to see each other, right? But we don't want to be that close. We don't need to count pores. But if you can expand the size of your print that's on the screen and zoom in, that might be a really simple way to do that. And along with that, what I'm going to warn people about is that you might notice that you get overexposed too when you have your computer screen on and you're saying, I'm wondering, I keep dimming all my lights as dim as they can get, but I still seem overexposed. Well, watch what happens when I increase the brightness on my computer. Now, this is when I'm working and I want to stay awake and I'm trying to do the work on my computer. But we all have these little tools on our own computer screens that are dimmers. And when we go into meetings, we need to figure out how to dim that light so that we're not overexposed. And that's one way, without getting super fancy with your lighting, that you can control your lighting a little bit.
That's great. And this is actually for Allison or Kiki. I'm not sure who wants to answer this. What about a patterned scarf with a solid top?
I think the thing we have to remember is a lot of these tips about patterns come from the days when we had video instead of digital, right, Kiki? So when we had video, there was a lot more jumping around with pattern. Now, I mean, like I do have a pattern in this lace, and it's not bothering the camera at all. I have a pattern in my jacket, so I like framing the face with a pattern. The thing to keep in mind with pattern is that it needs to echo the size of your features and the negative space on your face. So my features are sort of medium to large, so I can wear a bigger pattern. But if I try to wear like a ditzy pattern, it's going to be underwhelming and it's going to be dissonant. So try to match the size of your pattern to the size of your features and the negative space in the pattern. So like I've got pretty big cheeks and forehead. You also want to sort of echo in the pattern that you wear. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Kiki?
No, I think that it's a really good question. The one thing I will say is that if I had a matching pattern, sometimes the matching patterns might be worse. What if I had a dress that looked exactly the same as my wallpaper? That would be a problem. So I think just being aware of what the background is and then aware of what you're wearing and using some common sense. If it seems like your background is fighting with you for attention, then don't even question it. Just go find something that's going to make things seem a little less off-putting. Come back and test it out. And, one thing we were talking about before we, in one of our many meetings leading up to this, it was so fun, was that we were talking about how wonderful it is that even though we're going from meeting to meeting and everything today, if we left the house and had to meet somebody in person and we realized on the way to the interview or on the way to that meeting that we wore the absolute wrong thing. It was terrible. The dress was wrong. The color was wrong. And we realize it and we're in the car. It's too late. We can't turn around. We can't go back. We're stuck with it. We got to own that while we're wearing it. Well, right now, we're able to, at some point, come from behind go and fix it and then come back before we have the next meeting. And so the good thing is we're all getting trained and we have many, many opportunities to perfect this, to figure out, what's our best interview look? What's the best way? Like, how did I come across on that video? And boy, I felt really good when I was in that outfit. So now I know whenever I show up, this is exactly where the camera goes. This is exactly the outfit I wear. This is the color I wear. And I'm going to feel more confident in that discussion.
Thanks, Kiki and Allison. That's great. So there was a question that was actually directed to me, and it says, "Hello, Shira. Are there any tips in case we blank out in between a meeting? I feel I need a moment to catch up. How should I cover up? Should I apologize? Should I ignore?" Now, I'm not sure exactly how to read the blank out. The blank out to me could mean, hey, I just had a mental blank out, or whether your screen blanked out. Either which way, be authentic, right? Be real. It's the same equivalent let's say you were back in the in-person days and you were running late to the meeting or the interview. If you showed up 5 minutes late, what would you do? You briefly apologize. Like, that's just what it is. It's just life happened. If you ignored it, they would think that that you didn't notice the fact that you were late, right? So make sure if any little glitches happened, personal, something happens around you, you need a mental minute, your technology blank, a quick, simple, oh, sorry for that little glitch there. I'm back with you, right? Take, 5 seconds to explain. Don't over-explain, right? But just say something that'll let them know you're human, right? Things happen, life happens. If anything, sometimes it could be you could turn it into like a little a comical moment, right? If there was something that happened that was really kind of funny, oops, then you could have a laugh with the person. So that's what I would suggest. And then back to lighting here, or sort of. Carolina asks, she says, I have problems with lights reflecting on my glasses. What can I do? Kiki, is that a you question?
So it can be, but actually before I answer it, because so I've adjusted glasses on people who are for satellite media tours and things like that, but I don't myself wear glasses. So I'm going to ask my fellow panelists here who have to worry with it every single day, every single time they go on camera. How do you handle it?
I would say that it really goes back to what you were talking about before, Kiki, which is adjusting the lighting. So I do have a lamp here that's shining on me. If I position it, let's see if I can make it happen. There is a certain way that I position it where it makes I can't do it. But anyway, just futz with it, tweak it, like work with it. And maybe you need the ring light, maybe you need the diaphanous scarf with the butterflies. You just have to kind of play with it and experiment so that you can cut down on that glare.
And not only that, though, it's funny. This morning, actually, I was talking with this client, and it just so happened that her glasses were so reflective, I could almost see myself in her glasses. In fact, I have another client who every time I talk to her, I keep meaning to mention this. She happens to be sitting in front of a china closet. So the china closet is all glass. And so I can see my screen, like her looking at me, my screen in that glass. And I'm always like looking at it, right? There's these small little subtleties you just don't realize unless you pay attention and think about it from the other person's perspective. Well, what's the best way to do that? Before you get on a Zoom call, open up Zoom yourself. Just hit video. Just look at yourself. What's going on around you? How are other people perceiving you? All those little things are important. So somebody else said here, I tend to have a not so very nice RBF.
Yes.
Which I'll just say for those of you who don't know what that is, a kind of a stoic face. I'll say it that way. Usually, is that a good way to say that? Usually, if I'm squinting or trying too hard to listen or focus, how bad of an impression does that make? It's a really great question, and it goes back to the whole smiling thing. When the only thing that someone can focus on is your face, it's very good, first of all, that you're aware of that. You're self-aware. That's 50% of the game. The other 50% is doing your very best to watch for that. While most of us don't like to actually see ourselves in video, like right now, like the three of us see ourselves looking at you, okay? We can't see you, but we can see ourselves. So we may not like that. On the other hand, it's a really great thing because how often in an in-person meeting, we can't see what we look like. So that RBF thing can happen more than not. Here, we can actually adjust for it. So if you notice that when you're listening or focusing, you're going really kind of stoic, smile a little bit, just a little bit. You don't have to overdo it. You don't have to become some extroverted, gregarious person, but even the slightest hint of a smile will warm up the conversation. So just be a little bit extra self-aware if you're falling into that pattern. It says, Stephanie says, I noticed that none of you have artwork on your walls, paintings, frames, pictures. Is this not recommended? Kiki, I'm glad this came up because I know that you actually have some specific comments around the kind of wall backgrounds and pictures and things. You want to talk about that?
I think art is fantastic. And I have pictures surrounding me. You can't see it, but I have pictures all over. One of the first things that I do, if I could only take a knapsack that had 2 items in it, one of them would probably be a picture, right? So I love pictures. The thing you have to be aware of is if you have them behind you, if you have them in the shot, understand that the content that they like, if it's of a family member or something like that, be aware that that's something that could be, they could Google search for that person or something like that. The other thing is the reflective surface. So a lot of us have these really beautiful paintings and things like that that are captured in frames. And what happens is exactly what Shira was talking about a second ago. If you have the reflective surface on a large picture or even several pictures behind you, that can actually be something that's distracting, where the light that's reflected off of it or the glow of the computer that's reflected off of it can be something that can be distracting from the message that you're trying to make or the communication that you try to have. So pictures by themselves, artwork by themselves, not bad. They just present a whole new range of things that you need to be aware of. You know, Shira has a series of pictures over on one side of her wall. And so
You can't see it because of where I am, but if I go like this, you can. I have one picture there that depending on how I'm positioned, you can see, which gives a whole different dynamic if I allow that to be seen.
A whole different dynamic. And so one thing, like we were talking about before, the mind likes patterns. So if you do have pictures behind you, be very conscious of the type of pattern it's setting up. You want to be thinking about if they're groupings of pictures, you want to be thinking about, you know, look up how to do that in an aesthetically pleasing way so that it doesn't look like a disorganized hodgepodge of things. The other thing is that if it is a series of images or a continued series of like different types of artwork, that can be a beautiful thing to have behind you. It can actually be one of those things that helps to instill trust without people even realizing it. So just all I have to say is just be super aware. I think the reason why we don't have a ton of stuff behind us is it's just easier, right? It gives us a lot more flexibility.
Right. And by the way, this question did not come up, but I know it's one that Kiki, you and I always talk about, and that is how much room should you have on the top of your head? Could you explain all that?
Oh, right. Well, okay. So the number one thing you as an individual need to be aware of is you should have a little bit of head space. So
you don't want to be here.
You know, some of
You don't
us
want to be all the way
are
down.
people who are up here and there's no head space. Like that's not a good thing. You need to have, and if you learn from the pros, if you're watching newscasters and things like this, see how they're framed in the shot, okay? Because people are guiding them on how to do this the right way. But even they don't get it right all the time. You want a little pinch of space between your head and the top of the frame. This is the place where you want your head to be. But as you'll notice, it's very natural for us to kind of slump down as we're talking, to kind of get more comfortable. But to start out, you want to be right about here. Now, here's a little trick. You know the thing about mirroring where you can build rapport with people if you're reflecting little gestures and maybe even the facial types that like they smile, you smile, that type of thing. It's something that helps to build relationships and instill trust. But you also need to be thinking visually about your headspace, because if I were interviewing with Shira and I was down here and she was up there, that could give this feeling of imbalance because visually we're imbalanced in the shot. So you need to be aware that you want to match the person that you're talking with. Sometimes when I have guests and I'm interviewing them, if we don't have a chance to fix like they're on late or something like that, and they're down here and I'm up here, I don't want to seem like I'm lording over them. So I'll adjust myself. I'll adjust my camera so that we match. And that makes for something that looks a little more even. And it helps the dynamic of the relationship.
And along those lines with headspace, I know you and I have talked, Kiki, about the ceiling, and I don't have the best ceiling situation right now. Can you speak to that?
Oh, yeah. So here's a clue. If you see ceiling or floor, if you're seeing the top of a ceiling or the bottom of your floor and you're starting to see those angles like that, that's a sign that you probably need to adjust your camera angle. And so what you want to do is you do want to try to have something that is sort of facing you just a little bit above head on for the most attractive kind of appearance when you're in the shot. And so you'll notice that, well, not for Shira because we see her ceiling.
Yeah, I'd have to really reposition myself, which is a little tricky.
It's okay. We still like Shira, right? We still like, yeah. But you know, if you're trying to get it just the right shot, you want to have it so that the camera is looking at you pretty much directly on, but try to aim for like right here, where it's looking like right up here. And the funny thing about that is, I don't know, funny, haha, is that at networking receptions, it's the same sort of thing, is that if you look at somebody right here on their forehead, you know, you're not sure which eye to stare at, you kind of freak yourself out. If you look right up here, it's actually a really good way for you to focus and look like you're paying attention and all of that and feel more at ease. It's the same thing for where you should be thinking about where your camera is directed. You want it not to be looking like it's observing you from, you know, this shot or up here, you know. You want it to be more straight on. And if that means adjusting where your laptop is or your desktop, if that means adjusting the camera, play around with it, use books, we have things like this around, which are these little adjustable support systems that will allow you to hold your laptop, right? Your laptop holder, and you can adjust it so that even if you're using the in laptop camera that comes with it, you can adjust that, right?
That's great. Now, I know we're at time here. There was one quick question I'm going to try to answer really fast. It was really from the beginning. And it says, what should we wear to an online interview? And so that I could spend a lot of time on this, but I'm just going to be super fast. So first of all, on the one hand, the same rules apply, right? That you want to dress professionally, right? On the other hand, you may want to consider how that comes across. So men and women is going to be a little bit different. So for example, if you're a woman, right, and normally if you were going in live into an interview, you were going to wear a dress, for example, okay, which is appropriate. That dress might be just a very sort of plain top, and maybe it has a little bit of fanciness on the bottom. You're not going to see that in an interview. It's going to look like maybe just a shirt. Okay, they have no idea that it's a dress. Whereas if you wore something like what Allison was talking about with structure, right, a suit jacket, something that actually has a little bit of a frame, it already increases the level of professionalism. So I do recommend a suit jacket for an interview. For guys, I recommend the same thing. However, depends on the culture of where you're going. And this is very subtle because you may not know what the culture is. So when in doubt, go more conservative. So like in general, if you have no idea what the situation is, definitely go conservative. However, if you know, or even if you can find out ahead of time, if it's more of a casual environment, what you may want to do is do jacket, shirt, no tie. In fact, I actually recommended this to somebody recently. Now, of course, there is a difference between an interview and working day to day. Most of us are more casual day to day. So the question is for an interview, but if you go to the recruiter and say, look, I want to make sure that I'm dressing appropriately as a guy, would you suggest that I go full, suit, jacket, tie? They might say, well, no tie's fine, but ask in advance, but definitely make sure that you're still staying professional. Oh, and in terms of colors, beyond how it makes you feel, and Allison was talking about, that you can go color me beautiful and all of that. Do keep in mind that blue is a trust color. Okay, so if you're in an interview, blue is a trust color, so is brown, but it depends on your skin tone and how. But do you want to stay away from red? In fact, Kiki, I know you've talked about that a little bit, a little too much. It's not the right color for an interview, and B, especially if you have a more extroverted personality, it's going to be too much. It's going to make you a little too loud. You don't want people focused on what you're wearing. You want them focused on you, who you are, your personality, what you're saying. Focus on the content and not be distracted by things that you're wearing. So with that, I know we've gone a little bit of overtime, so thank you so much for joining us all. And before we wrap up, I wanted to let you know that every Friday morning, Kiki and I co-host a free open Q&A for job seekers. It's called Hire Moment Mastermind. Kiki, if you want to go ahead and put up that link.
I've got it up. If you look in your comments, you can check it out right there.
Great. It's every Friday from 9:15 to 10:15 a.m. Eastern. I know we have people all over the world watching this. It's an hour of open Q&A. It's myself, it's Kiki, it's several other career experts. We have some speed networking and Q&A. It's a fun time. And I also posted on my website afterwards. And so if you join us, we can share all that with you. And also we have a tip sheet for you as a takeaway. So Kiki, you want to let people know how they can receive that?
Yeah, so we have a tip sheet. Every single person who registered for this event today through Eventbrite is going to receive our tip sheet afterwards. And if you have additional questions, you can let us know at that time. The questions that I think we got through most of them, but if you have additional questions for us after this, feel free to reach out. We're all very happy to answer those questions. And then also check these comments here on YouTube and make sure that you see the takeaways that we have for you. Each one of us has a different link that you can go to visit the Higher Moment Mastermind. You can check out Allison's great tips and sign up for her free personal style starter series. And you can also get a makeup tutorial workshop with me if you're interested in doing that. So I used to do, I'm a freelance makeup artist, used to do it for the National Press Club. So if you want to learn a little bit more about your individual makeup application, things like that for video, you can sign up for that.
And if you're interested in boosting your resume, your LinkedIn profile, that's one of my superpowers. So my contact information is in the tip sheet as well. In fact, Kiki, I just put into the chat box a recording link. So for those of you who cannot make the Higher Moment Mastermind, maybe you're in a different time zone, doesn't work for you, I just put the link for where you can find those recordings. So
I just added it on there. So check your YouTube comments and check out the link there.
Terrific. Well, everyone, thanks so much for joining us. We hope that you found these tips valuable. We hope to actually run this program again at some point. So it's been wonderful, being with you. We wish you a blessed day and stay safe.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.